Lihanna pressed her face against the cold metal window of the research station. Stars filled the darkness beyond, more beautiful than anything she had ever seen from Earth. At 16, she was the youngest human ever allowed to study at the Galactic Council Station. Her dark eyes sparkled with wonder as alien ships moved like glowing dots in the distance. "Still can't believe you're here?" asked Nari, walking up behind her with 2 cups of warm tea. Nari was Hannah's mentor, one of the few humans who worked directly with the council species. She had kind eyes and always made sure Hannah felt safe among all the strange alien beings. Hannah took the tea and smiled. "Dad always said I would reach the stars someday. I just never thought it would be this soon." Her father, Park Jiho, was Earth's ambassador to the council. He had fought hard to get Hannah this research position when she showed amazing talent in studying alien life. The research station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. 12 different alien species worked here together. Most of them ignored the humans, treating them like useful pets. Humans were good at trading and making peace between fighting species, but the aliens thought they were weak and unimportant. Hannah didn't care what they thought. She was here to learn about alien plants and animals from worlds she could barely pronounce. Every day brought new discoveries that made her heart race with excitement. "What are you working on today?" Nari asked, leading Hannah toward the laboratory section. "The samples from Kepler 442b," Hannah replied, her voice growing serious. "Something is wrong with them, very wrong." For the past 3 weeks, Hannah had been studying soil and water samples from 3 different worlds. The Velorn species had asked the council to let them colonize these planets. They said the worlds were empty and perfect for their people. But Hannah's tests showed something terrible. In the laboratory, Hannah showed Nari her findings on the computer screen. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the data. "These aren't natural readings. Someone has been poisoning these worlds." Nari leaned closer, her face growing pale. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure," Hannah said. "The poison is designed to kill only the native life forms. It won't hurt the Velorn people, but it will destroy everything else. Millions of animals and plants are dying right now." The Velorn were one of the most powerful species in the council. They had blue skin and 6 arms, and they always spoke in cold, emotionless voices. Hannah had tried to avoid them during her time on the station, but now she had proof they were murderers. "We have to report this," Nari said, but her voice shook. "With fear, I already tried," Hannah replied. "I sent my findings to the Council Committee on Planetary Protection 3 days ago. They said they would investigate. But look at this." Hannah pulled up another screen showing recent reports from the 3 worlds. "The poisoning is getting worse. If the Velorn really wanted to stop it, they would have done something by now. They're the ones doing it." Nari sat down heavily in a chair. "Hannah, you're accusing one of the Council's most important species of genocide. Do you understand how dangerous that is?" "I understand that millions of innocent creatures are dying," Hannah said firmly, "and I understand that it's wrong." That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the dying worlds, about creatures gasping for breath in poisoned air. She had to do something more than just file reports that nobody read. She decided to contact her father directly, Ambassador. Park Jiho was in a meeting with other Earth diplomats when his personal communicator buzzed with an emergency message from his daughter. His heart nearly stopped when he read her findings. "Sir?" asked Kim Dayan, the admiral who was visiting from the Earth Defense Force. "Is everything all right?" Park showed him the message. Dayan's face turned hard as stone as he read. "This is genocide," he said quietly. "And they're framing it as natural colonization?" Park replied. "If Hannah is right, the Velorn are committing one of the worst crimes in galactic law. What do we do?" "We protect my daughter," Park said, "and we try to save those worlds." But it was already too late. The next morning, Hannah woke to find Velorn security forces outside her door. Their leader, a tall creature with cold silver eyes, spoke in perfect human language. "Lihanna, you are under arrest for bioterrorism and attempted sabotage of lawful colonization efforts." "What?" Hannah gasped. That's impossible. I'm trying to stop terrorism, not commit it. Evidence has been found in your personal files, the Velen said. You have been planning to poison the three worlds yourself and blame our people. This is a very serious crime. Nari rushed forward. This is insane. Hannah would never hurt anyone. She's trying to save those worlds. The evidence speaks clearly, the Velen replied. She will face trial before the full council. As they dragged Hannah away in energy restraints, she called out to Nari. Contact my father. Tell him they planted false evidence. Tell him I'm innocent. But even as Nari ran to send the message, both she and Hannah knew the truth. The Velen had the power to make any evidence they wanted appear in the computer systems. They controlled most of the station's security, and the council always believed their word over human claims. The trial lasted 3 days. Ambassador Park fought harder than he had ever fought for anything in his life. He brought Earth's best lawyers and investigators. He presented Hannah's real research, showing that she had discovered the crime, not committed it. None of it mattered. One by one, all 12 council species voted guilty, guilty. The vote was unanimous. The Velen had convinced them all that this young human girl was a dangerous terrorist who wanted to destroy 3 beautiful worlds. The sentence was death by neural disintegration. Public execution. Broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to other lesser species who might think about interfering with council business. Ambassador Park fell to his knees in the courtroom as the verdict was read. Admiral Dan caught him, but his own hands were shaking with rage. Please, Park begged the council. She's just a child. She was trying to help. Please don't do this. The council ignored his pleas. 2 days later, Hannah stood on the execution platform. The neural disintegrator would slowly destroy her brain, causing terrible pain before death. The entire galaxy would watch a 16-year-old girl die in agony. As the machine powered up, Hannah looked directly into the broadcast camera. Her voice was steady and clear. Dad, if you're watching this, I want you to know I'm not afraid. I tried to save those worlds. I tried to do what was right. Tell Earth that I love them. Tell them I wasn't a terrorist. I was just a girl who cared about innocent life. The machine activated. Ambassador Park screamed his daughter's name as her body collapsed, but in the moment before death took her, Hannah whispered words that only the most sensitive recording equipment picked up, words that would later be analyzed by Earth's intelligence services. They killed me to hide their crimes. Don't let them get away with it. The galaxy watched an innocent girl die. Most species felt it was justified. Humans had to learn their place. They had no idea what they had just awakened. Ambassador Park Ji-ho sat in his quarters staring at a picture of his daughter. 3 days had passed since Hannah's execution, and he had not eaten or slept. His hands shook as he held the photo of her. Smiling face from her first day at the research station. A soft knock came at his door. Sir, it was Yunari's voice. The Prime Minister is calling from Earth. Park slowly walked to his communication terminal. The face of Prime Minister Cho Min-ho appeared on the screen. Cho's usually calm expression was replaced by something Park had never seen before, cold, burning anger. Ji-ho, Cho said quietly, I'm bringing you home, all of you. Sir? Every human diplomat, every traitor, every citizen in council space. Everyone comes home, now, Park nodded numbly. What about the trade agreements? The peace treaties? There will be no more agreements, Cho replied. No more treaties. The council has made their position on human life very clear. As Park began packing his belongings, he noticed something strange happening outside the station. Human ships that had been docked for routine trading were leaving, all of them. Even the ones that should have been in the middle of important business, but what puzzled him most was that more ships kept arriving. Human vessels he didn't recognize. They looked like trading ships, but something about them felt different, dangerous, on Earth. Prime Minister Cho stood in a room deep beneath the government complex. The room was filled with military officers Park had never heard of, looking at screens showing star maps and ship positions. Admiral Daeon, Cho said to the woman who had been with Park during the trial. Are you ready? Kim Daeon, still wearing her diplomatic clothes, smiled for the first time since Hannah's death. But it was not a kind smile. We've been ready for 37 years, sir. We've been waiting for this moment since the first day we joined the council. Then begin Operation Sleeping Giant. Across human space, things that had been hidden in darkness began to move. On the edge of the solar system, massive structures that space sensors had registered as asteroid mining platforms suddenly came alive. They weren't mining platforms at all. They were military shipyards, and they had been building warships in secret for decades. Captain Jang Ki-woo stood on the bridge of the battleship Silent Thunder. Around him, 1,000 other warships appeared from hiding places throughout the galaxy, ships that officially didn't exist. Ships that violated 17 different council treaties. Ships that Earth had been building while pretending to be peaceful traders. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving the activation codes from Earth Command." Ki-woo looked at the picture on his personal display, a news photo of Li-hana receiving her research position. Such a bright, hopeful girl. "All ships," he said into his microphone. "You know why we're here. You know what they did to our child. Today we stop pretending." On the council station, Ambassador Park was gathering the last of Hana's research when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed red as automated voices announced in 12 different languages. "Unknown vessels approaching. All species report to emergency stations." Park looked out the window and felt his breath catch in his throat. Human ships were everywhere. Not the small trading vessels the Council was used to seeing, but massive warships that seemed to bend. Light around their hulls. Technology that shouldn't exist. The Council Emergency Assembly was chaos. Representatives from all 12 species were shouting at each other in their various languages. The head Velen, the same creature who had ordered Hannah's arrest, slammed his 6 arms on his desk. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Humans don't have military vessels. They're traders and diplomats." Admiral Dan's voice came through the station's communication system, calm and clear. "Attention, council members. This is Admiral Kim Daeon of the Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded by 1,000 human warships. We wish to make an announcement." The main display screen activated, showing Daeon standing on what was clearly a military command bridge. Behind her, dozens of officers worked at weapons and navigation controls that looked far more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. "For 37 years, Daeon began, humanity has served this Council faithfully. We traded with you. We mediated your disputes. We followed your laws. We pretended to be weak because we hoped we could live in peace." The Velen representative stood up. "This is an illegal act of war. You cannot threaten council space." Daeon smiled the same cold smile she had shown the Prime Minister. "Can't we? Let me tell you what you never bothered to learn about humans. We are very good at hiding our true nature. Those trading ships that have been visiting your worlds, they've been mapping every military installation, every defense system, every weak point in your territories. On planets across the galaxy, human trading posts that had existed for decades suddenly revealed their true purpose. Hidden weapons systems came online. Defensive shields that could stop entire fleets activated around strategic locations. Communication networks that the Council didn't even know existed lit up with activity. "Those research stations where our scientists studied your cultures," Daeon continued, "they've been cataloging your species' psychological weaknesses, your military capabilities, your political divisions. We know everything about you. We know how to hurt you in ways you can't even imagine." Lin Sujin sat in a bunker on Earth, surrounded by files that contained 37 years of intelligence. Gathering information about every council species, every leader, every secret they thought was hidden. Her teams had been working since the first day humans joined the council. Preparing for the possibility that peace might fail, she opened the file marked Project Nemesis and began typing commands. Across the galaxy, Council computer networks began experiencing malfunctions. Military communications went dark. Defense systems shut down without explanation. Financial markets collapsed as trading algorithms went haywire, but the most disturbing malfunction was on every screen in council space. Video began playing on repeat. Hana's execution followed immediately by footage of human warships emerging from hiding. The message was clear: this is what you did, and this is the consequence. Back on the council station, the Velern representative was screaming into his communicator. Where are our defense fleets? Why aren't our weapons responding? Because we've been inside your systems for 37 years, Dayon replied calmly. Did you really think we would join a galactic community without protecting ourselves? Did you think we would trust our safety to beings who execute children? Prime Minister Cho's image appeared beside Admiral Dayon on the display. His voice was quiet, but every being in the galaxy could hear the pain and rage beneath his words. You killed Li Hana because you wanted to prove that humans are weak and worthless. You wanted to show the galaxy that you could murder our children and face no consequences. You were wrong. The station shook as human ships moved closer. Park could see them clearly now, vessels of impossible size and design, covered in weapon systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics. This is our declaration to the galaxy, Cho continued. The age of the Council is ending. You made it clear that human life has no value to you. We're about to show you how much your lives are worth to us. Admiral Dayon stepped forward. Every Council military installation within 50 light-years is now offline. Your fleets cannot move, cannot communicate, cannot fight back. We did this in 6 hours. We could have done it at any time during the past 3 decades. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the grief of a woman who had watched an innocent child die. You want to know the difference between humans and the Council? When we discovered your crimes, we tried to save those dying worlds through legal channels. When you discovered our preparations for war, you executed a 16-year-old girl. The display switched to show footage from the 3 worlds the Velern had been poisoning. The images were horrific: dead forests, poisoned rivers, the bodies of countless alien creatures who had died slow, painful deaths. Hana died trying to save lives you were destroying for profit, Dayon said. She was a child who wanted to help others, and you killed her to hide your genocide. Ambassador Park felt tears rolling down his face as he watched. His daughter's final research, the evidence she had died for, was now being broadcast to the entire galaxy. The Council will respond to this aggression, the Velern shouted. The combined fleets of 12 species will crush your pathetic little armada. Admiral Dayon laughed, and it was the most terrifying sound Park had ever heard. Combined fleets? Look at your displays. Where are your ships? Where are your weapons? Where is your mighty Council now? Across the galaxy, every Council military vessel was floating dead in space. Their crews were alive but helpless, watching human ships pass by like ghosts in the darkness. This is what humans do when we're angry, Dayon concluded. We don't just fight back. We make sure the fight never happens again. The Council is finished. What comes next depends on how quickly you understand that the age of treating humans like pets is over. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in shocked silence. Ambassador Park realized he was smiling for the first time since his daughter's death. Earth hadn't just awakened. It had revealed that it had never really been asleep. The Velern homeworld of Thizes had never been attacked in over 1,000 years. Its cities stretched across 3 continents, home to 12 billion blue-skinned beings who considered themselves the most advanced species in the galaxy. Their 6-armed forms moved through crystal towers that reached toward the sky, confident in their power and untouchable status. That confidence ended at 1437. Local time, when the sky turned black. Captain Beek Taeyun stood on the observation deck of his assault ship, watching human vessels emerge from hyperspace above Thizes. Not the massive battleships that had surrounded the Council station, but smaller, faster ships designed for precision strikes. Behind him, 300 soldiers of the Reaper Corps checked their equipment one final time. These weren't normal human soldiers. Each one had been genetically enhanced for warfare, their bodies modified to be faster, stronger, and more deadly than any natural human. They were Earth's secret answer to alien species who thought humans were physically weak. "Target confirmed," reported Shinura from her position at the communications console. The young tech specialist had spent the last 72 hours infiltrating every computer network on Isis, learning every secret the Velen thought was hidden. "Primary objective is the Council Assembly Building. Secondary targets are the military command centers." Beak nodded. The primary objective wasn't just a building. It was where every Velen who had voted to kill Hannah was currently hiding, believing their homeworld's defenses would protect them. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. "Admiral," Dayan's voice crackled through the ship's speakers from her command vessel. "All units, this is Operation Justice. Remember, we're not here to conquer. We're here to deliver a message. Make it clear." On planets across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. The 12 species who had voted for Hannah's execution were each receiving personal visits from Earth's military forces. But the Velen, who had framed and murdered an innocent girl, were getting special attention. Director Lim Soo-jin sat in her intelligence center on Earth, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Screens around her showed the positions of every council fleet, every hidden base, every escape route that might be used by war criminals trying to flee justice. "Status report," she called out. "Korthak Space, their main fleet is disabled and drifting," came the first. Response: no resistance. "Xanthari territory, defensive platforms are offline, population centers are broadcasting surrender messages. Hegemony worlds, their government is requesting immediate peace talks." One by one, the reports came in. Most council species were surrendering without a fight once they realized the true scope of human military power. But the Velen were different. They were still trying to fight back. "Ma'am," called a communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Velen High Command. They're demanding we withdraw immediately or face total war." Lim smiled coldly. "Patch them through to Admiral Dayan. I think she'd like to respond personally." Above Thizes, Admiral Dayan listened to the Velen demands with patience that surprised even her own officers. When the alien finished speaking, she activated her reply. "This is Admiral Kim Dayan to Velen High Command. You murdered Lee Hannah to hide your genocide of 3 worlds. You framed an innocent child as a terrorist. You voted unanimously for her execution and then broadcast her death across the galaxy as entertainment, and now you demand that we withdraw?" She paused, letting the silence stretch. "No, the first human landing ships touched down in the capital city of Isis 30 minutes later. Velen defense forces, armed with energy weapons and backed by massive war machines, waited to repel what they expected to be a standard invasion force. Instead, they met the Reapers. Beak Taeyun moved like a shadow made flesh, his enhanced reflexes, allowing him to dodge energy blasts that should have been impossible to avoid. His weapon, a rifle that fired ammunition created from compressed matter, punched through Velen armor like it was made of paper, but he wasn't alone. 300 enhanced humans moved through the city like a plague of death, each one capable of fighting 10 normal soldiers and winning. They didn't kill civilians, didn't destroy homes or shops. They had one specific target: the beings responsible for Hannah's death. The Velen Military Command Center fell in 18 minutes. The planetary defense headquarters lasted 12. By the time the sun set on Thizes, every Velen involved in the conspiracy against Hannah was in human custody. "Transport them to the assembly building," Beak ordered his troops. "All of them. It's time for justice." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Dr. Oh Min-seok was conducting a very different kind of warfare. The elderly psychologist had spent decades studying alien minds, learning what each species feared most. Now he was using that knowledge to broadcast specially designed fear frequency messages into council space. The broadcasts weren't just propaganda. They were psychological weapons that targeted each species' deepest evolutionary fears. For the insectoid Kyrex, images of fire and poison that triggered their genetic memories of extinction events. For the aquatic thalassy, sounds that mimicked the calls of their ancient predators. but the most effective broadcasts were the simplest ones. Footage of human military capabilities that the Council had never imagined existed, followed by the quiet voice of Prime Minister Cho explaining exactly why this was happening. Every action has consequences, Cho's voice said over images of human warships disabling entire fleets without firing a shot. You chose to execute an innocent child. These are the consequences of that choice. On the Council station, Ambassador Park watched the reports coming in with a mixture of grief and grim satisfaction. His daughter was still dead. Nothing would bring her back. But the beings responsible for her death were learning that humans protected their own, Yunari found. Him sitting in Hannah's old laboratory, staring at the research equipment the girl had used to discover the Velern genocide. "Sir," Nari said quietly, "there's a message for you from Earth Command." Park activated the communication terminal. Admiral Dayan appeared, but she was no longer on a warship bridge. She was standing in what looked like a courtroom with Velern, prisoners and restraints behind her. "Ambassador," Dayan said formally, "as Hannah's father, you have the right to witness justice being served. These are the beings who framed your daughter and voted for her execution. Would you like to be present for their trial?" Park felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. "What kind of trial?" "The same kind they gave Hannah," Dayan replied. "We've gathered all the evidence of their crimes. We've documented their conspiracy. We'll present the facts, and then we'll carry out the sentence they deserve." "And what sentence is that?" Admiral Dayan's expression didn't change. "The same one they gave your daughter. Neural disintegration. Broadcast across the galaxy so everyone understands what happens to those who murder human children." Ambassador Park was quiet for a long time. In the background of the transmission, he could see the Velern prisoners struggling against their restraints, their 6 arms flailing in terror. The same creatures who had watched his daughter die with cold satisfaction were now begging for mercy they had never shown. "Yes," he said finally, "I'll be there." The trial of the Velern conspirators lasted exactly as long as Hannah's had. 3 days, but this time the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Recordings of their private conversations about framing humans, documents showing their genocide of 3 worlds, proof that they had planted false evidence in Hannah's research files. Most importantly, there was Hannah's original research data showing that she had been trying to save lives, not destroy them. The verdict was unanimous, delivered by human judges. Guilty of genocide, guilty of conspiracy, guilty of the murder of Li Hana. The execution was carried out using the same neural disintegration device that had killed Hannah. Each Velern died exactly as she had, slowly, painfully, while the galaxy watched, but Earth wasn't finished. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Dayan announced as the last Velern conspirator died. "Every species that voted to execute Li Hana will face justice. Every being who participated in covering up the genocide of 3 worlds will be held accountable." She looked directly into the broadcast camera, and her next words chilled every council member still alive. "We spent 37 years trying to be your friends. You chose to make us your enemies. Now you'll learn the difference." Across council space, the remaining 10 species began receiving detailed messages from Earth, lists of individuals who had participated in Hannah's execution, locations of secret bases and hidden assets, evidence of other crimes that Earth had discovered during decades of intelligence gathering. The message was clear. We know who you are. We know where you are. We know what you've done. Justice is coming. Some species immediately began offering surrender terms. Others started evacuating their leadership to hidden locations. A few, led by the militaristic Korthek Empire, began gathering their remaining forces for a final stand. They didn't understand that the hunt had only just begun. In her command center on Earth, Director Lim Sujin marked the Velern homeworld as objective complete on her tactical display. 9 more species remained on the list. 9 more groups of beings who had decided that human life was worthless. The Nexus system had been the center of galactic civilization for over 2,000 years. The massive space station at its heart was where the Council had made decisions that affected trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. It's gleaming. Towers and defensive platforms had never been seriously threatened by any military force. Today, that was about to change. Admiral Kim Daeon stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Hana's Vengeance, watching as the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history prepared for battle. 8 remaining Council species had gathered every warship they could find. Over 10,000 vessels ranging from massive dreadnoughts to small fighter craft against them. Earth had sent exactly 1,000 ships. The odds should have been impossible. 10-1 was the kind of advantage that ended wars before they began. But as Dan looked at the tactical display showing enemy positions, she felt only cold satisfaction. "Communications," she called out. "Are we ready to broadcast?" "Yes, ma'am," replied the officer. "Every inhabited world in the galaxy will see." This Dea nodded. It was important that everyone watched what happened next. The galaxy needed to understand that the age of treating humans as harmless pets was ending forever. Captain Baek Tae-yun was aboard one of the smaller assault ships, preparing his Reaper Corps for what would likely be their most dangerous mission. His enhanced soldiers sat in perfect silence, checking weapons and equipment that most of the galaxy didn't even know existed. "Remember," Baek told his troops over the internal communication system, "we're not here to conquer territory or steal resources. We're here for justice." Every council member who voted to kill Hana is somewhere in that station. None of them leave alive. Through the ship's windows, the Reapers could see the enemy fleet spreading out in defensive formations. Massive Korthik battlecruisers with weapons that could crack moons. Swift Xanthari destroyers designed to hunt in packs. The few remaining Velern ships, their crews probably still in shock from watching their homeworld burn. "All ships," Admiral Daeon's voice came through the fleet communications, "begin Operation Final Justice. Show them what humans do when we stop pretending to be weak." The first indication that this would not be a normal space battle came when the human ships began moving in ways that violated known physics. Vessels that should have taken minutes to change direction were turning instantly. Ships that should have been limited by the speed of light were covering impossible distances in seconds. Director Lim Sojin, monitoring the battle from Earth, smiled as she watched the confused reactions from Council forces. "Activate the reality manipulation systems," she ordered. For 37 years, Earth had been developing technology based on a simple discovery. The laws of physics were more like suggestions when you knew how to bend them. While the Council had focused on bigger guns and thicker armor, humans had learned to make space itself into a weapon. The first Council ships to die didn't even understand how they were being destroyed. One moment they were firing at human vessels that seemed impossibly far away. The next moment those same ships were somehow inside their defensive perimeters, weapons firing at point-blank range. "What is this?" demanded the Korthik Fleet Admiral over the emergency communication channel. "How are they moving through our lines?" Admiral Daeon answered personally, her voice calm and cold. "We're doing what humans do best." "We're changing the rules of the game?" The human ship Silent Thunder, under Captain Jang Kiwa's command, demonstrated exactly what she meant. Instead of trying to fly around the massive Council defensive formation, it simply folded space and appeared inside the enemy fleet's center. Its weapons, not energy beams or projectiles, but controlled gravity wells, began tearing Council ships apart from the inside out. "This is impossible," screamed a Xanthari commander as his destroyer was crushed by forces that shouldn't exist. "Space doesn't work this way." "It does now," Captain Kiwu replied calmly, watching as 3 more enemy vessels were compressed into tiny balls of super-dense matter. But the most terrifying human innovation wasn't the space-folding drives or the gravity weapons. It was what happened when Earth's ships were damaged in battle. A Korthik dreadnought managed to score a direct hit on one of the smaller human vessels, blowing a massive hole in its hull. The Council crews cheered, thinking they had finally found a way to hurt their enemies. Then the hole began to close. The human ship's hull was repairing itself, metal flowing like liquid to seal the damage. Within minutes, it was as if the ship had never been hit at all. Self-repairing armor, Director Lim noted from her command center. Another little surprise we've been working on. As the battle continued, it became clear that the Council fleet was not just losing, it was being systematically destroyed. Every advantage they thought they had was useless against human technology that seemed to come from another universe entirely. Worse, the humans weren't even trying to capture Council ships or territories. They were simply eliminating every vessel that had participated in the decision to execute Hannah. This wasn't a war of conquest. It was an extermination. Surrender. The Korthik Fleet Admiral finally broadcast. We surrender. Stop this madness. Admiral Dayan's response was immediate and final. Lihana tried to surrender during her trial. You executed her anyway. There will be no surrender today. The flagship of the Korthik Fleet, a massive vessel that had been the terror of 3 star systems, found itself suddenly surrounded by human ships that had appeared from nowhere. But instead of destroying it immediately, they began using precision weapons to disable specific systems. What are you doing? The Korthik Admiral demanded. We're taking you alive, came Captain Beak's voice over the communication channel. You voted to kill our child. You're going to face the same justice you gave her. Across the battle zone, similar scenes played out. Council ships were disabled rather than destroyed when they contained beings who had participated in Hana's execution. The humans weren't interested in killing random soldiers or civilians. They wanted the specific individuals responsible for their daughter's death. The assault on the Nexus station itself was almost anticlimactic after the space battle. Beak's Reapers moved through the corridors like unstoppable ghosts, their enhanced abilities making them nearly impossible to fight. They ignored the station's automated defenses, walked through security barriers that should have stopped armies, and systematically captured every council member who had voted for Hannah's death. Target acquired, Beak reported as his team dragged the last of the surviving council members to the station's main assembly hall. All primary objectives are secured. The assembly hall where Hannah had been sentenced to death became the site of the council's final trial. Admiral Dayan stood where the judges had once sat, looking down at the beings who had decided that human life was worthless. You are charged with genocide, she announced to the galaxy, her words broadcast to every inhabited world. You are charged with the conspiracy to murder an innocent child. You are charged with the systematic oppression of species you considered inferior. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just Hannah's case, but decades of council crimes that Earth's intelligence services had documented. Worlds stripped of resources without compensation. Species enslaved under the guise of protection. Children from dozens of worlds killed when they became inconvenient to council interests. The verdict is guilty, Dayan announced. The sentence is death by neural disintegration. The same fate you gave our daughter. But before the executions could begin, something unexpected happened. Ambassador Park, who had been watching from Earth, sent a message to the fleet. Admiral, he said, his voice heavy with grief and exhaustion. I've been thinking about what Hannah would want. She died trying to save lives. She wouldn't want us to become killers, even to avenge her. Dayan frowned. Sir, these beings murdered your daughter. Yes, Park replied. And killing them won't bring her back. But there's something that would honor her memory better than revenge. The transmission shifted to show footage from the 3 worlds the Velern had been poisoning. But instead of the dead landscapes everyone expected to see, the worlds were recovering. Human ships had arrived with advanced terraforming equipment, restoring the poisoned soil and water. Hannah died trying to save those worlds, Park continued. We finished her work. The creatures she tried to protect are alive because of her sacrifice. That's how we honor our daughter's memory, by saving lives, not taking them. Admiral Dayan stood silent for a long moment, looking at the council prisoners. Part of her still wanted them to suffer as Hannah had suffered. But another part remembered the 16-year-old girl, who had cared more about saving alien creatures than protecting herself. The sentence is modified, she announced finally. You will live. but you will spend the rest of your lives rebuilding what you destroyed. You will restore every world you damaged, compensate every species you wronged, and serve the galaxy instead of ruling it. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the most powerful military force they had ever seen chose mercy over vengeance. Not because Earth was weak, but because they were strong enough to choose a harder path. But Admiral Dayan had one final message for the watching universe. "Let this be clear to everyone," she said, her voice carrying the authority of a species. 5 years after the fall of the Council, the galaxy was a very different place. Ambassador Park Ji-ho, though he no longer held that title, knelt beside a small grave marker in the memorial garden he had built on Earth. The simple stone bore only his daughter's name and age, Lihana, 16, around the marker. Flowers from dozens of different worlds bloomed in colors that Earth had never seen before. "The Kithara delegation brought these yesterday," he said quietly, touching the petals of a silver blossom. "They're from the third world you tried to save. The one where the water was completely poisoned," he smiled sadly. "It's beautiful now, clean rivers, healthy forests. The creatures there are thriving." A gentle breeze moved through the garden, carrying the scent of 1,000 different flowers. Park liked to imagine it was his daughter's spirit, still curious about alien life forms, still trying to help where she could. "Sir?" Yunari approached from the garden entrance. She looked older now, with gray streaking her black hair, but her voice still carried the same kindness it had when she was Hannah's mentor. "The afternoon reports are ready for your review." Park nodded and stood, brushing dirt from his knees. He wasn't a diplomat anymore, but he had found a new purpose. As director of the Galactic Restoration Project, he oversaw humanity's efforts to repair the damage done by Council policies. It was work Hannah would have loved. They walked together toward the project headquarters, passing through a city that had become the unofficial capital of the new galactic order. Ships from hundreds of species landed daily, bringing requests for help, offers of trade, or simply seeking guidance from the species that had brought down the mighty council. "How are the Velan colonies adapting?" Park asked as they reviewed. "The daily reports, better than expected," Nari replied. "The survivors who chose to stay in council space are working with our terraforming teams. They've helped restore 12 worlds so far. The ones who refuse to cooperate have been relocated to the far rim as requested." Park nodded. It had been one of the hardest decisions Earth had made after the war, what to do with the species that had participated in Hannah's execution. Some, like the Velarn leadership, had been too corrupted by their old ways to change. They were given ships and supplies, then sent to the galaxy's edge to start over, far from anyone they could hurt. But others, especially the younger generations, had embraced the new way of doing things. They worked alongside human teams, learning to restore instead of destroy, to protect instead of exploit. "And the Korthik situation?" Park continued. "Admiral Dayon reports that their integration training is ahead of schedule. Apparently, their military culture translates well to protection duties once you redirect their aggression toward helping instead of conquering." Park smiled at that. The proud warrior species that had once terrorized 3 star systems were now some of Earth's most effective peacekeepers. It turned out that beings bred for battle were excellent at stopping others from starting fights. Across the galaxy, on the bridge of the patrol ship Guardian's Promise, Admiral Kim Dayon reviewed similar reports from her fleet. The Earth Defense Force no longer hid in the shadows. Their ships openly patrolled trade routes, responded to distress calls, and kept the peace between species that might otherwise go to war, but they were no longer alone in that work. "Admiral," called Captain Jang Kiwu from his nearby vessel. "The Xanthari Task Force reports successful resolution of the mining dispute on Kepler 438b. No casualties. Both parties satisfied with the mediation." Dayan smiled. The swift, pack-hunting species had proven remarkably good at de-escalating conflicts before they became violent. Their natural speed and coordination made them excellent at surrounding potential troublemakers before weapons could be drawn. "And the Thalassy convoy?" "Delivered medical supplies to the Altair system as scheduled. The plague outbreak is contained, casualties minimal. Each former council species had found their place in the new order based on their natural abilities rather than their political power. The aquatic thalassi had become the galaxy's premier medical corps, their fluid-based physiology making them excellent at treating diseases that affected multiple species. The insectoid Kyrics, with their natural hive-mind communication, had become the new galactic communication network. It was a system based on cooperation instead of domination, service instead of control. "Ma'am," called the communications officer. "Priority message from Earth Command. Director Lim wants to speak with you." Dayan activated the long-range communication array. Director Lim Sujin appeared on the screen, looking tired but satisfied. Behind her, walls of monitors showed intelligence data from across the galaxy, but now it was used to predict natural disasters and coordinate relief efforts rather than plan military strikes. "Admiral," Lim said, "we've received another request for protection. The Helix Nebula colonies are reporting pirate attacks on their shipping lines. Species identification? Unknown. But they're using older Council military technology. Probably deserters who refuse to accept the new order." Dayan nodded. "There were always a few beings who preferred the old ways, who missed the time when the strong could prey on the weak without consequences. Earth's new role as galactic protector meant dealing with such groups quickly and decisively. I'll dispatch the Third Fleet," she decided. "Captain Beak's Reapers can handle the boarding. Actions if needed." "Acknowledged, and Admiral. The refugee integration reports are in. We're ahead of schedule on all fronts." That was perhaps the most surprising development of the post-Council era. When word spread that Earth was offering protection and assistance to any species that needed it, refugees had begun arriving by the millions. Beings fleeing war zones, persecution, natural disasters, or simply seeking a better life in a galaxy where strength was used to protect rather than exploit. Earth had welcomed them all. Not on Earth itself. The planet remained primarily human. But on the hundreds of worlds humanity now protected, former Council territories that had been stripped of resources were restored and open to any species that wanted to build peaceful communities. "Sir," Nari said as she and Park finished reviewing the restoration reports, "there's something else. A personal message from the Kepler colonies." She activated a small display showing a group of alien creatures Park didn't immediately recognize. They had scaled skin and multiple eyes, clearly adapted for aquatic environments. But what caught his attention was what they were holding, images of Lihana. "Honored Park Jiho," the lead creature said in translated speech. "We are the children of the water world your daughter tried to save. Our grandparents died in the poisoning, but our parents survived because her warning came in time for some to be moved to clean areas." The creature held up one of the images, Hana's research ID photo, the one that showed her bright, curious smile. "We have built a shrine to the human child who died for strangers she never met. Every year on the day of her death, we gather to tell the story of Lihana, who cared more about saving lives than saving herself. We want you to know that her sacrifice meant something. We are alive because she was brave." Park felt tears running down his face as the message continued. Similar tributes had come from dozens of worlds, species that had survived because of Hannah's research, children named in her honor, schools and hospitals built in her memory. His daughter had wanted to help alien life forms. In death, she had become a symbol of hope and protection for billions of beings across the galaxy. "Dad would have been so proud," he whispered to the empty air. That evening, Park stood once again in Hannah's memorial garden, but he was no longer alone. Nari was there, along with Admiral Dayan on shore leave, Director Lim via holographic projection, and dozens of other humans who had known and worked with his daughter, but most remarkably there were aliens. Beings from dozens of species who had traveled across the galaxy to pay their respects at the grave of a human girl they had never met but whose death had changed their lives. "She would have loved this," Park said, looking at the diverse crowd gathered around his daughter's memorial. All these different life forms coming together peacefully. It's everything she dreamed about when she studied xenobiology. Admiral Dayon placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. The galaxy is safer because of what happened to Hannah, not because of what we did afterward, but because of who she was. Her curiosity, her compassion, her willingness to do the right thing even when it was dangerous. Those are the values that guide Earth's policies now. A young Thalassy medic stepped forward, offering a small gift, a water flower that only bloomed in the cleanest environments. For the shrine, she said in careful human language, from the world she saved. As the ceremony continued into the night, Park thought about how different things were now. The council was gone, but the galaxy hadn't descended into chaos as many had predicted. Instead, it had found something better, a system where every species was valued, where the strong protected the weak, and where no child would ever again be executed for trying to save lives. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still beings who preferred the old ways, still problems that needed solving. But for the first time in galactic history, those problems were being addressed by a civilization that chose compassion over conquest, protection over profit,